But there is a class of advertising that is just brand awareness. So you think Nike's the classic, right? If you open a magazine or, I mean, well, magazines are harder to find these days too.
Yeah,
but
right.
but
In
if you
theory.
but if,
Okay, welcome back to Exploring Growth. My philosophy really, when it comes to marketing mediums, if you've been listening to this podcast for any time, you've probably heard me say it at least 2 or 3 times. And that is, you probably shouldn't start with the medium or the platform. You should probably start with your audience and their needs. And then, of course, your messaging or your vision and how all that maps together. And then think about where that messaging can be most effective, which medium would be most effective. So, you don't look at a side of a bus and say, hey, can we put our logo there, or could we put our message there? There's a lot more thinking that has to go into the side of the bus before you end up picking the side of the bus if you want your marketing to be effective. So with all that said, today we have the opportunity to explore the effectiveness of direct mail as a means for growth. And my guest today is Wilson Zare, founder of Zare Mail. Welcome to Exploring Growth.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when our paths crossed, I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity to have this discussion about direct mail. I've been wanting to have this conversation more directly. No pun intended. I've talked about it kind of loosely with other guests, as an anecdote. But I thought, hey, let's talk about direct mail in 2024. And is it a thing? Is it effective? Is it, I don't see a lot of my clients using it. I mean, I do have clients that use it, but I don't look out there and see a lot of companies that are itching to get, back to direct mail. So as we kind of get into that discussion, let's first start with tell us about Zare Mail and kind of your typical client. What do you guys do? And that should give us a little context to your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, Zare Mail's been around. There was just an article in the Daily Journal of Commerce here in Oregon talking about Zare Mail. It's been around we're in our 25th year now.
Nice.
Started pre-bubble on the internet. The original company was jointly funded by Hewlett Packard and Draper Fisher Jurvetson. And DFJ it was like they were the guys who funded Skype and eFax and Hotmail and a bunch of things.
Okay.
Like that. So Zare Mail is, the purpose of Zare Mail is to make sending direct mail easier. And back to your comment, I mean, there are almost two levels to the discussion. There's direct response, and then there's direct mail. And direct mail is a segment of direct response. We can do direct response with many different mediums. But we're pretty focused on mail.
Right.
So the idea with Zare Mail is you can come to the site, you can upload your document, you can upload a list, you see a preview of what's going to be produced in real time. You like what you see, you hit the button, you're in the mail tomorrow, the next day at a fraction of the cost.
Love it.
In addition, for us, we're a software company. The Zare Mail is powered by the Sendex platform, which is a web to print solution. And basically what we do is automate the ordering of print products. So when you push that button, we've got a network of production partners around the country. The document is routed electronically to the most efficient place to be produced, at which point it becomes paper and it's folded, inserted, put in an envelope and mailed. And so we kind of get the best of both worlds. We get the efficiency on the front end of being able to deal with electronic documents and the way those can be, we can manipulate those and transport them. But at the same time, we turn them into physical documents that are optimized for the mail stream. Everything is the right size. It's addressed correctly. It's got a barcode on it. They don't go in a mailbox. They go to the business mail entry unit where everything's all bundled and sorted and trayed and ready to go out for delivery. So, I mean, it's not only is it a lot faster solution, but it's less expensive as well, for sure.
Gotcha. And as a sort of a side note, we were talking about this a little bit ago. You have the kind of the parent company or the behind the scenes company, Sendex, is more of a technology company. Is that correct?
Exactly. Sendex is a software company that builds the software behind Zairmail and a number of other sites as well. I mean, the Sendex software is generic web to print. We created the category in 2004, and basically what we do is we automate the ordering of print products. But we do have this specialty in direct mail, given that we started Zairmail long ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we know an awful lot about it at this point.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's interesting. You've got kind of like a lot of digital technology creating something that's analog, right? I think there's a kind of interesting juxtaposition there. But of course, it's needed. I personally think that direct mail still has a place for certain businesses, certain brands. Um, has, in your opinion, if you look back over the course of, let's say, the last 20 years, really, of kind of the internet coming on and everything kind of going digital, um, and yeah, probably 20, maybe a little bit more. Would you say that direct mail was broken at that point, or it just lost the value in the market?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's broken really. I mean, if we look at the mail stats are a little more complicated than they're kind of made out to be. Usually,
Mhm.
there are lots of different classes of mail, but the two primary classes of mail we talk about usually are first class mail, which is what you get if you go down to the post office and buy a retail postage stamp,
Mhm.
and the other is called well, they're calling it marketing mail these days. They're trying to rebrand it again.
Mhm.
But before that, it was standard A, and before that, we used to call it bulk mail or even junk mail, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was mostly advertising stuff.
yeah.
And I mean, if we look over the history of the last 20 years, definitely volumes are down because of a lot of transactional mailing, right? When you sending in your check for your credit card payment or for your mortgage or whatever, a lot of that stuff has gone electronic, as it should.
Hmm.
It's faster, more efficient. You've got services like PayPal. Most banks have a bill pay kind of application. Um, so you can, that kind of makes sense. But direct mail does some things that no other medium does. And so when you're looking out over certainly the last 10 years, the volumes have been relatively consistent. And part of that is that because direct mail costs money, you have to pay postage and
Hmm.
printing. And so it's unlike some forms of email and some digital advertising where the incremental cost is almost zero, right? It's
Hmm.
very low. Um, with direct mail, because of the cost, it's always been kind of driven by return on investment, by ROI, right?
Hmm.
If the programs don't make money, if you don't see an ROI, people don't do it again. So if you can look out there at the volumes, most of that volume that's out there today is supported by returns. So
Right.
it's pretty solid. Unlike a lot of the stuff, the digital stuff, you'll see that's more speculative in nature because it doesn't cost anything to carpet bomb 3 million people. This.
Right. Yeah. Except for the labor to do it. Having the insight of how to put the technology together in order to have it
Mhm.
be effective, assuming it's going to be effective. Um,
Right. Well, if you think about email, I mean, if you can buy into a platform that lets you do cold emails, for example, I
mhm.
mean, the incremental cost of an email it has to be a hundredth of a penny or something. I mean,
Yeah.
it's tiny.
Yeah.
Um, so in that view of the world, I mean, you can send everybody on the planet an ad for Cialis, and and hope that the two people that respond are gonna pay for the service.
That's right.
So that's but we can't do that in direct mail. We need to be
Right.
very targeted and very thoughtful and put offers in front of people that are going to produce a response. And I
Right.
think we're very good at doing that.
So, who do you see naturally gravitates to this type of medium? Like what type of brands?
Well, historically, if I could, while I'm thinking about it, I mean,
Yeah.
just a little aside, um, we talked about direct mail, kind of analog versus digital, and I've
Mhm.
spent a lot of my career. Worked on a bunch of startups now, but I mean, a lot of my career working on something I call convergence.
Okay.
So when the internet first started, well, the first web browser was what 1995 or something,
Hmm.
and the internet started growing exponentially after that. there's a whole bunch of legacy applications that have value for people, but they had no connection in that digital world. So we spent a lot of time kind of stitching those things together. One of the early startups I worked on was something called eFusion, which really did voice over IP applications and tried to bring, what we did is essentially integrated the public telephone network with the internet. And
Oh
so
wow.
applications like Skype are in that same area. eFax was another one. A lot of people aren't using fax anymore, but
That's right.
it was a convergence application. And
Yeah.
there's still a lot of those opportunities out there, to make the legacy stuff work with the new digital stuff. And all of our lives are, kind of driven around digital these days.
Hmm.
So those connections need to be made. And to some extent, tools like Zoom do that too, right? I mean, we're connecting people, but that are exist in the analog environment, but we connect them digitally.
Right.
So anyway, so sorry for the
Yeah,
rant.
no, that's good. I like the history lesson because it's good for especially younger people who haven't lived through all of those changes. I remember eFax, and I remember using it for business development. Because even back then, when email was still sort of relatively new, back in the early 2000s. I mean, not new, but people weren't using it like they're using it today, I guess. There were lots of companies that came on board online that, like an eFax type of service that wanted to get inside someone's inbox. And, we're still trying to do that today. And hopefully in more genuine ways, with a lot more parameters that are holding us back from being less genuine, which is great. And to your comment about sending emails, we do a lot of cold email outreach for our clients, and if you know how to do that really well, and it's genuine, then and you play by all the rules, then it can have amazing responses. But I think the same applies to direct mail. I mean, you have your bad actors as well. People just
True.
basically spamming, and that's where the junk mail. People wouldn't be calling it junk mail en masse if they didn't think about it as junk mail, right?
Right. No, exactly.
So I think that there's sort of bad actors in with every medium, even including the buzz ad. You see all the you get behind a bus and you see a lawyer's face there, and you have to wonder at what point does that make sense for them. I guess if their audience is at the bus stop and they look behind the bus, I don't know.
Right. Well, I actually talked to a guy a while back. He had something called broadcast broadcast media, and basically what they did is they went to airports and they took those little shelters where you wait for the bus in long
Hmm.
term parking, and they installed screens in them.
Hmm.
And then they just blast advertising. They think, well, for the 15 minutes that you're stuck there, you're going to have
Yeah,
to be our prisoner. You're going to have to watch our ads.
that's right.
And at some point, that wears a little thin. The consumer
Yes.
just doesn't need to be interrupted everywhere they go.
Yeah, there's this saturation point, I think, is what comes to mind, and that's a classic example of creating new mediums or new versions of existing mediums, and then shoving them down small business owners' throats, saying, "Look, you should be here." And then those sort of less sophisticated entrepreneurs looking at it and saying, "Oh, wow, there's an opportunity and it's relatively affordable. I guess I should be there." And then complying, and you have this thing that kind of goes on. As I wouldn't necessarily say it's a scam, but no one's really measuring the ROI on eyeballs at a bus stop or at that train station. So it does have a lot of question marks behind it.
Right. I was talking to a lady just this morning who has a gluten-free bake shop, and her big
Mhm.
advertising thing she does every year is she buys a placement at this golf tournament, this local golf tournament.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, well, how many of those folks are gluten-free, do you think?
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know, Guys out there
Was she
drinking
saying
beer,
that it
hitting the.
works? Was she saying it works?
No, she just saying she didn't know.
Of course. That's a hard one to get some analytics on.
Right? Yeah, there's no direct linkage at all, and maybe somebody will come in and mention that they saw you on the course. But in addition, I'm thinking that a lot of those folks may not be, you know, gluten-free fans, you might need to go to the health club or something, you know.
Yeah, that's a big stretch for me to get there on that as a marketing spend. So with that, with that in mind, I mean that's kind of a funny example, but unfortunately, a lot of those are out there, and that's how marketing dollars get spent. You know, where like what types of companies will naturally gravitate to direct mail, and then of those companies, or even others who are on the fringe, who are maybe don't use it as a primary channel, where does it fit in their strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, traditionally, well, our tool, because it makes it fast and easy to send, historically, we've done a lot of work with small to medium business. I mean, if you're a small mail customer, your options are limited sometimes. Well, in the pre-Zaire mail days, your options were limited. My friend Marty Emery, who used to be VP of marketing at the U.S. Postal Service, told me a story one time where he said, you know, his dad had this little hardware store, and he kept telling his dad, "You should use direct mail, Dad. I work at the post office. Helps you, helps me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you should use it and grow your business." So one day, Dad says, "Okay, maybe you're onto something." So he goes down to the local post office and walks up to the counter and he says, "I want to do some direct mail. What do you got for me?" And there was just a sound of crickets. You know, it's like,
Yeah, I'm here. You know.
so, and especially for, you know, traditionally, if you're dealing with a commercial printer or a mail house or something like that, if you've got a job that's 500 pieces, nobody even wants to pick up the phone. I mean, you know, it's,
That's right.
you know, because of the costs involved, the capital costs of that kind of a business. And we kind of break through that, um, because the production partners are looking at us, Zairmail, as the
Mm-hmm.
customer,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we aggregate all those volumes together, and it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense for our production partners at
Yeah.
that
Okay.
point.
It's sort of like a PEO actually in the insurance world.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. And the
that's the connection that comes to mind. I have no idea why, but
no, that's great. I mean, it's just you're just aggregating volumes, and
yeah,
production partners like volumes, so that works out. I mean, but we have to manage the complexity behind that. You know, behind the
right,
aggregation and tracking and customer support and all of that
right.
stuff. Um, Traditionally, we've seen a lot of interest in real estate, mortgage brokers, independent insurance agents. We've done other stuff that you see sometimes, landscaping, pest control. I mean, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things like that, small to medium business. And then we have some larger customers that are doing some debt collection things, or debt restructuring, renegotiation, things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um, Historically, we've done a lot of stuff with mortgage brokers, and I can explain why that's true. But you know, the market for cash out refis right now is not great because
Yeah,
interest rates
right,
are high.
right.
But when interest rates are low, that works out better.
Yes, it does.
Um, so that's kind of, you know, that's kind of where we play. The reason for direct mail, I mean, you didn't ask this question, but just to provide a little context, there are
Sure.
certain things that direct mail does that no other medium can do. You know, the first of all is that direct mail can reach every household and business in America 6 days a week, and
Okay.
nothing else can do that. Secondly, it's proactive communication. You know, imagine if, and Google AdWords is a great tool. I'm not going to diss them at all. I mean, we use
Mm-hmm.
them, and a lot of our customers use them too. But it's passive, right? People have to be looking for a term. They
Mm-hmm.
have to be looking for something in order for that to work. But with
Mm-hmm.
direct mail, if I can identify the right client, I can reach out and touch them anytime
Mm-hmm.
I want. You know, well, 6 days a week.
6 days a week. Yeah.
um, I guess the third thing is demographic targeting. So if I want to reach Jewish dentists in New Jersey that have purchased a car in the last 6 months, I can find that list. And
Mm-hmm.
we talked about mortgage brokers. With a mortgage broker, if I'm part of a bank, I can actually buy credit score data, so I can identify, you know, not only, you know, people who funded loans when interest rates were higher,
Hmm.
I can find people, that meet my underwriting criteria. They have a certain
Hmm.
FICO score, no 30-day lates, no bankruptcies in the last 2 years, et cetera. I can align with my underwriting criteria and reach out and talk to those people, have a
Right. That's right.
conversation. Um, so there's no waste in that. And really, when we look at the success of a program, uh, not just direct mail, any marketing program, it's like 70% is audience or the list, talking to the right person.
Hmm.
20% is having the right offer.
Hmm.
This is indirect response, I guess. Think
That's
if you're
right.
brand advertising, that's different. Nike does something different. Just do
Hmm.
it. They're,
Hmm.
and we can talk about why they do it that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but 20% is the offer, and the other 10%, whatever it is creative, which is always interesting for me because it tends to be people tend to focus on the creative. They want to focus on the art,
Yeah.
but that's not usually what drives a successful direct response campaign.
That's
I
right.
mean, it's a bigger factor in brand advertising for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think creative is for sure a part of it, just like it is on Facebook ads and those type of things, for sure. But I kind of have this framework that I always go back to is it's 50% audience, 50% messaging, and 100% just send it. you know, because when it comes to whatever you're talking about, direct mail, email, whatever, it needs to be sent so you can get the feedback and you can know, is your messaging right, is your audience demographic right, or your however your direction is being painted.
mhm.
But there is a creative element to it that is very important. I'm sure, like when you look at a direct mail piece, where you put the offer and where you put the title and how big and how it all flows together matters. Just like if you're putting together a Facebook ad, um,
Oh,
I think it all matters.
it matters for sure, but it really it matters less if you're talking to the wrong person.
That's right. It doesn't matter. Yeah, none of that matters because the message is definitely not going to land. And I think that's what's really appealing about the direct mail side is your access to that type of data. And from my perspective, I look at like the mortgage broker route makes a lot of sense because you're trying to reach someone at home and they're in their home thinking about their home. And so with a Facebook ad, they may not be in their home thinking about their home. They may be in the car pickup line. So out of context to which, there's a lot of advantages to a Facebook ad or a Google ad or those type of things for various other reasons. But I think for context for the homeowner being at home, thinking about their home, they can sit and look at their windows that need to be replaced. They can, think about their mortgage and how high their rate is, and their car in the driveway, plumbing, heating, and air, and so on and so forth. Because people want to invest in their home. Ultimately, I mean, most people want to improve their home. Not everyone can due to just financial constraints at whatever season in life. Um, but I think the context of them getting in their mailbox, which I think most people get it from their mailbox and walk into their home. So the behavior and mindset that's happening when they're looking at that piece of mail, and then mapping it to that data is impactful. I think it can be very effective.
Well, yeah, no, and in that example too, I mean, we could take it one step further because if we have access to that data, I could tell them, you can pull out $10,000. Here's what your new payment's going to look like, and here's what
Mm-hmm.
the APR looks like. So it's not, so there's an element that's imagining what you could do to your home, but there's also
Mm-hmm.
the practical element of, look, I'm going to save $100 a month, and
That's right.
there it is, the
That's right.
numbers, right?
That's right. Yeah, you can show the upside and the downside.
Right. So, I mean, I think, so, I think that was the demographic part of it. The other thing is, and you touched on the other element. The other element is that it's just built into the American psyche. I mean, somebody,
Mm-hmm.
telemarketer calls you on the phone during the day, and how do you react? Right? I mean, it's completely negative these days. I mean, I would hate to be it. Well, I'm not going to say that, but I I feel sorry for the folks in the telesales industry that have to make those cold calls
Yeah.
because people get angry, really, really
Right.
angry.
Yeah.
But mail is just built into the American psyche. People have been trained from a young age
Hmm.
to, and I don't want to say trained, but they're accustomed to
Hmm.
picking up the mail every day, sorting through it. There's some stuff they keep, some stuff they don't.
Hmm.
Um, some stuff ends up on the fridge, which is a home run from the marketing standpoint.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just part of the American experience, and so that helps from an advertising standpoint. And that's
Yes.
why I guess in general the marketing association, American Marketing Association, tends to say that well, the number they quote is $13 for every dollar spent on average. This is what the industry returns look like.
That's pretty
And,
high. Yeah.
yeah, and that's pretty compelling. I mean,
Yeah.
there are examples of stuff that are more in specific cases, and
Hmm.
over a career in marketing, I mean, I've seen some campaigns that work really well and
Yeah.
some that have not worked so well. But
Sure.
as an industry average, I think that's pretty compelling.
For sure. Do you see most of the companies or brands using direct mail as their only channel, or as a mix? You know, like you kind of mentioned before, like a convergence of a hybrid of doing this and this together, or as sort of just like one layer in a more of an omni-channel approach.
I think it really depends. I mean, it depends on the industry and the type of player. I mean,
Hmm.
if you were a realtor today, I mean, you probably need a website. You probably need to use social media, but there's still a role for just sold, just listed postcards. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's right.
to reach out and get people. We have a customer in Virginia that does open houses, and they'll invite. Basically, they'll bring a food truck, and park it in the driveway, and then invite the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I guess you could do that in social media. They try, but
Yeah.
it's it may for him it makes more, especially since he has to spend money on the food truck. It
Hmm.
makes more sense to just pull a list or do a radius search around the house and just pull a list of all the neighbors and send out an invitation.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I'm a big fan of using any medium to get people to an entree, something that is going to be an entree to their real sale, and in a very genuine way. So it's a free invitation to this sort of meeting place, whatever that looks like. In that case, a food truck in the neighborhood. We're going to be here doing this thing. Come enjoy it if you'd like. No hard sale, but when you're there, then we're going to tell you about everything else we're doing that's related, hopefully, and very genuine. And if you want to get involved with that, you can. But you're not going this hard pitch from, hey, you just picked this up cold, and I want to tell you about buying this thing. That's a much harder leap.
Right. Well, and from the standpoint of the realtor, I mean, certainly you're marketing this house, but what you're doing is something much broader than that too. You're building a relationship and a rapport and building a brand in the neighborhood, right? And so when people have the need, they think of you, and you're doing that with a sense, building on a sense of reciprocity, right? You give to the customer, they feel like they should give back, even if they don't um, ultimately purchase, but just being able to talk with them, shake a hand, give them a business card,
Hmm.
get to know them, and maybe they'll pass you along to a neighbor. But this
Yeah.
this whole networking idea of becoming, part of the fabric of the community, um, is a really good one for his business, and it's
Yeah.
something that we can support.
I
From
can see that because it's genuine, and it probably speaks to his brand, which is a lot of other things. And it's not forced.
no, exactly, yeah.
So I have another question for you. This is kind of off the side, but I'm thinking about again mixing mediums, and platforms or tools, right? Um, I'm curious to know if you have used video at all to support any direct mail outreach, and if so, or have you seen companies wanting to do that with their direct mail?
We do, and I think it goes back to what you said earlier too about you know being able to pick the right tool for the right customer.
Hmm.
And we have a model. I teach at the university level too when I'm not running this company, and I usually
Okay.
teach marketing, entrepreneurship, finance, and business strategy.
Okay.
And we have a model we use called the strategic marketing model, which you can find on the internet, or I'd be happy to share with you. But the
Hmm.
basic idea is you identify the product and you define the target audience.
Hmm.
And maybe you need to tweak one or the other to make sure you can get alignment between the
Hmm.
two. Then we select the price point. Price point is usually next because, um, well, the bottom the bottom tier on pricing is always cost of goods sold.
Hmm.
And what we'd really like to do is capture the perceived value in the mind of the customer,
Correct. Yeah,
but that's always moderated by the competitive offerings.
for
So
sure.
we, based on those elements, we select a price point that tells us, based on the audience, the price point, and the product, that tells us what channel we're going to use. We need to use,
Hmm.
and the role of our advertising and promotion is always to build awareness and support activity in the channel, build awareness, establish preference, and
Hmm.
support the activity in the channel.
Yeah.
And so, to the extent that direct mail can do that, it's a very effective tool. The reason for telling you all that is I want to come back to an example of a bond measure we worked on, local bond measure for a school district here in Oregon, and we looked at the audience. A bond measure. This bond measure was to create a new athletic facility for something that was over 100 years old, needed to be
Hmm.
replaced. But we're asking people to sign up to pay more in property taxes every year. And so if we look out there at the audience, what we could do, what we were able to do is we were able to pull a list of registered voters from the county. Then we took and we looked at people were homeowners versus non-homeowners and people who had children versus those who didn't have children. So 4 segments. And then we overlaid that on the voter file. And then we
Hmm.
can tune the messaging to each of those audiences. So if you're a homeowner and you don't have any kids in school, then the messaging needs to be more about community, supporting your
Hmm.
community and being a good, citizen and helping your neighbors, etc.
Sure. Yeah.
As opposed to if you're a homeowner and you have kids in school, then it's value. It's a value-based sale. Your kids are going to be getting this extra
Hmm.
stuff. That's a good thing. Um, and if you're not a homeowner and you have kids in school, it's a bonus, right? Why wouldn't you vote for it,
Yeah. Right. Right. I love that. It's like a messaging grid.
right? Right.
Yeah.
So once we have that, we say, well, what's the most effective way to teach, to reach those people? And it's not just, in this case, it's not just direct mail. What we did is we created a little website.
Hmm.
We got testimonials from students, and it turned out that building was around so long, we could find generations of people, granddad who was in it,
Yeah.
and mom who was in it, the kid who was in it, and show these generations of people
Yeah.
who got use out of that building and who would benefit, who's going to
Yes.
benefit from the new building, right? Tell that story. But that
I was
all
about to
goes
say that's a perfect time to start storytelling.
exactly. And we put all of that content on the website, right?
Hmm.
And then we use tools like social media to drive people to the website.
Hmm.
We use stuff like yard signs and door hangers and stuff too to reach
Yeah.
people. But then in that campaign, direct mail is very strategic too because we have these segmented audiences. And here in Oregon, everything's vote by mail, right? And so
Yeah. Okay.
what we can do is we can start, and we, by the way, um, I mean, you hear all this negative press about vote by mail. We've been
Hmm.
doing it for 25 years here and never had an issue, so, as
Yeah.
far as I can tell.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the only way we do it because it's less expensive.
Right.
Um, but anyway, we could start from the date of the election and work backwards. And it turns out a lot of people, when they get their ballot in the mail, they'll vote the same day, right? They just check the
Yeah.
boxes, drop it in, and they're done. So
Hmm.
your messaging after that, there's nothing. You might change their mind, but there's no way you're going to affect their vote.
That's right.
But some people do wait until the last day, till the day the ballots are due. So what we do is we send out some pieces in advance and kind of do some community events, some outreach, and communicate with people. Try to build this constituency. Then we'll reach out with direct mail and remind them of that. then we can find out from the state exactly when those ballots are going to mail. So I'm going to be in the mail, in the mailbox with a postcard the day before they receive their ballot or the same day they receive the ballot to remind them why this is important.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hit them with another piece the day before ballots are due.
Yeah.
And, and so
That's very effective.
right, and
That's
so
fair.
well, the last time in terms of results, the last time they did this bond measure, it just passed, but they had to wait until late into the night to see it because they won by 2 votes or something.
Oh, wow.
But using this technique, it was overwhelming success. It was not even close, right?
Yeah.
So the tools do work, but it's not just about I think it's not just about websites. It's not just about email. It's not just about yard signs or direct mail. It's how do I, as a marketer, how do I use all the tools that are available to me to communicate with the
That's
person
right.
I'm trying to influence?
That's right. 100%.
And
That's 100%. And I could even go back to, you were talking about telemarketing calls. The systemic problem you have with that and direct mail and Facebook ads and every other medium is that you have someone who wants to turn a profit quickly. And that means in a short 90-day term or a 1-day term, or, they don't want to invest in the audience. They want to get money. And so whenever you want to get money, that means you need scale. And so when they try to go to scale, that means spam, because they think, well, we're just going to hit everybody and then we'll get a few. And that's what makes it difficult for every other marketer. The good marketers out there that understand people, behavior, they understand a little bit of psychology, and they understand how to reach people where they are, like we're talking about in the home, in context to something. Very, very rarely, and you tell me, but I know as a marketer, very rarely when I'm watching TV out at an airport, wherever I am, I very rarely see good marketing. And the good marketing that comes through, it when you see it, because as a marketer, you see all the layers that are there, and you see the time and attention that was put to reaching you in such a genuine way that you're compelled to respond. You're compelled to do something more. If anything, take a picture of the ad and share it, but I very rarely see it where all of those things that you're talking about, where you're talking about audience, and you're talking about the product and pricing, and all of those things have been labored over so that it can be done in a meaningful way.
No, exactly right. And in that case, I mean, that's the way we use the videos is on the website, and then we drive people to the website, and the videos can do their thing,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, that was, and videos are very powerful. I mean, people would much rather listen to a story and see images than read words, and I mean, it's funny. I was at the farmer's market here last weekend, and there was the lady from the literature department at the university was there, and they have a bunch of old books in storage, and so they were selling books at the farmer's market, and they were selling them by the inch. And I was like, okay, so
that's interesting.
But I told her, I said, for a lot of homes these days, a lot of people don't read anymore. So for a lot of homes, those are just decoration.
Yeah.
So, so the more colorful ones could actually be more valuable.
Yeah. Right. Depending on what kind of decor they're going for.
Exactly. And she just rolled her eyes. She was not happy with that. But for whatever reason, I mean, people are just not as interested in literature as they once were. And that's unfortunate, right. I think. But
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But I think the other thing I want to come back to is this idea too of response versus brands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're talking about here and what we deal with mostly, we do brand advertising too, brand reinforcement. Certainly that food truck example, he's building brand and building rapport with the local community. But a lot of what we do in direct mail is direct response, right? We're putting an offer in front of people and trying to get them to respond in some way that helps us. In this election, we're looking for a vote. So we're not always looking for a sale,
That's right.
Or dollars. But there is a class of advertising that is just brand awareness. So you think Nike's the classic, right? If you open a magazine, or I mean, well, magazines are harder to find these days too.
Yeah,
but
right.
but
In
if you
theory.
look, but if you look at the advertising, a lot of their stuff is just do it, right? It's an image that's thought provoking or memorable in some way. And it's got the Nike logo and it says just do it. And the reason why they're doing that is because, they're trying to build top of the mind brand name recognition because of the way the customer buys. They know that that customer is not going to pick up the phone and order sneakers, when they see that ad. What's
That's
going to
right.
happen is the next time they're in the store looking for sneakers, they'll say, Nike. And that's the
Hmm.
box they reach for,
That's right.
because I can't
Yep.
influence them. Well, I could try to do in-store advertising and ad on the shelf or something,
Hmm.
but it becomes harder to do that. So, so it's a little different approach, but if we want to build brand on a national basis, it's really expensive too. I mean, it's
Oh
you
yeah.
know you see all the beer companies and the consumer products companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars on that.
Right. So last question as we wrap up this is,
So,
where do you see direct mail going in the coming months and years? Do you think it's going to come back as strong as it once was, or maybe in a different way?
well, I think it'll continue to be relevant
Hmm.
because once again, it's producing a response. So it's hard to argue with return on investment.
That's right.
So as long as it continues to produce a return, people will continue to use it. I think unfortunately our friends at the Postal Service have been raising postage rates about twice a year recently, and um, there's this idea of price elasticity that comes into play at some point.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll lighten up on that a little bit.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking. If that gets out of control, then the, barrier to entry can be harder. Your return is going to be less, naturally.
Yeah, I think it's so that particular thing is not helpful. I mean, the postal service has a universal service mandate. It seems like they think if they raise the price somehow they're going to become profitable. But I mean, if you're trying to deliver a letter to you know a small cottage out in rural Oregon, it's never going to be profitable. I mean,
Right.
and there's nothing you can do to change that. I don't
That's right.
think. But but there are other things the postal service can do, and they'll figure it out. I'm confident. That stuff like because they visit every house and business in America 6 days a week. I mean, just think of all the other things they could be doing when they visit your house. In terms of delivering packages and pizzas and what have you.
It, yeah, it seems like there's some innovation that definitely needs to come. And that might happen when Bezos buys it, or, because that would be, I mean, Amazon's at my house at least once a day, if not twice a day. So,
Right. Well, that's the other thing that and I've had this conversation with postal service in the past. That's the other thing that's different is because that postal service, because of Amazon, things like Amazon, the FedEx guy and the UPS guy are there more often. But
mhm,
still, the postman or the postwoman, the postal person, is going to
mhm,
be there 6 days a week. They're part of the neighborhood, right? You get to know
mhm.
them on a first name basis. You're
That's a
used to
great way to
seeing
look
them.
at it.
And
Yeah.
so that you've got this relationship with the postal service,
Mhm.
and they can really find other ways to leverage that relationship, I think.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
then, by the way, if you already got a truck in somebody's driveway, the incremental cost to deliver one more package
Hmm.
is about zero.
That's right.
So
If you can
from
figure out the logistics on the pre truck getting there, which Amazon pretty much got figured out.
yeah, no, exactly. Well, that's why Amazon is one of the biggest customers of the U.S. Postal Service right now.
That's right.
And
That's the way I see it is, bringing on these other partners that can utilize their current infrastructure, their current service, and current relationship that they have with the customer.
yeah, I mean, back to your specific question, I do think based on the points we've covered, direct mail has some characteristics that are very unique, and so it's a unique tool in the marketing mix.
Mhm.
And as long as it occupies that space, people will continue to use it. As long as the U.S. Postal Service doesn't price themselves out of the market. Um,
Agreed.
yeah. So, so that's what I'm thinking. And on our side, we're a software company, so we continue to make it
Yeah.
as efficient as possible. We actually have a new application. People can download it. It's at www.zairmail.com/speedy,
Okay.
SPEEDY, and it's basically a desktop application where if you craft a letter or if you have a document, you just drop it on the icon. It says, "Would you like to upload this or send it?" You pick send, and you're in the mail. It's going to turn it
That's
into a
great.
letter and send it out, even if it's just one piece of mail.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's great.
So, so we'd love to see a lot of people using that. The first two pieces are free, I think, at this point.
Yeah. I'll have to try that out. I love that. I like the low volume aspect because your market then widens greatly.
Well, exactly, and I think the hard part of mail is not finding a stamp. The hard part is all the other stuff that comes with it, right?
Hmm.
Printing a letter, folding it, putting it in an
Hmm.
envelope, putting a label on it. And by the way, it's not going to look right if it's got a label or if you handwritten it, and it's not going to travel through the mail right because it's not doesn't have a barcode. If you're
Yeah.
using Speedy, by the way, and you send a letter, um, every letter's going to have a barcode. You can track it. You can see your letter as it moves through the postal service, and when it gets delivered, we'll send you an email, tell you it's there.
It reminds me of the Domino's pizza tracker. Have you ordered from Domino's through the app?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you got to. It'll probably give you ideas on how to improve your current app. I love it. It's like they get me basically every week, once a week, twice a week, they hit my text as a notification saying, "Hey, who wouldn't love cheesy pizza right now in your mouth?" And I'm like, me, I would love to have that right now. I got to see what you're talking about. Takes me to the app. I hit my normal order for the kids because we don't want to cook, and
Uh-huh.
it says it's a pizza tracker, and it has a little bar that goes across the top, and it shows exactly where your is at and being made, and it says your order is being made. Now it's in the oven. Now it's ready to be picked up, and it shows the time and everything. Just that
That's,
little visual or interactive, you know, prompt makes me want to use their app. Now the pricing is good too, and it's right down the road. But I mean, their app is really good for that. So that's what makes me think of when you said your Speedy app. Like, man, if I had that experience, then it's like, why am I not using direct mail, right? I
right.
could
Well,
just if I could just drop images and send them very quickly, then seems like a pretty similar experience.
right. Well, no, knowing this does, Speedy will tell you. It'll tell you when it's processed, printed, mailed.
I love it.
If you want to dig into the details, it'll tell you where it's at in the delivery
Yeah,
route,
I
and
love
they'll
that.
tell you when it gets there. But it's not just direct mail. Direct mail we think of as one to many. This could be
Hmm.
one to one. You want to send
Hmm.
mom a letter on her birthday or Mother's Day. Becomes very easy, fast and easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of salespeople, business development reps who are building relationships with customers, and they have certain touch points in their workflow or their sales process pipeline that they could add this in there as a natural. I have this template that I'm going to send out. I change the name, throw it into Speedy, and it gets sent off after this meeting. So by the next day or two, it arrives, and it's another more kind of colorful touch in the process of building that relationship. Those type of applications, I think, are out there.
For sure, yeah, and it's tactile too, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's something you can touch and feel, and it has added significance.
Hmm. I love it. Hey, this has been a great conversation, as I knew it would. I love talking about these type of topics that are kind of atypical from today's digital marketer. And I think that companies need to be thinking about atypical ways to grow because that's the way you stay fresh and relevant in front of your audience. Of course, it's got to make sense, but I love that Speedy application. We'll put that link in the description so everybody can check that out. Besides that, and it's Zairmail, ZAIRMAIL.com, correct?
Right, it's like airmail with a Z on the front.
With a Z, like it. Okay. If they want to reach you, where should we send them?
You could just reach out to me at wilson@zairmail.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks again. I loved it. We'll have to have you back another time to have a follow up.
Would love to do it. Thank you, Lee. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you spending time with me.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.